Have you been setting boundaries, doing self-care routines, and repeating affirmations but still feel like you're pretending to be okay? Carl Jung warned empaths about this exact trap, the difference between authentic healing and performing healing. Most empaths spend years replacing one false identity with another, trading the martyr for the healed person without realizing they're still in a cage. Here's Jung's 30-second test that reveals whether your transformation is real or just another mask you're wearing to survive. Let me paint your exact story. You hit your breaking point, started saying no, blocked toxic people, bought all the healing tools, journals, crystals, self-help books. You meditate every morning, set boundaries like the Instagram therapist told you. And initially, it felt like progress. But now something's wrong. You're still exhausted after social interactions. You still feel guilty saying no. You still don't know who you are without the caretaker role. The question haunting you at 3 a.m. I'm doing everything right, so why do I still feel like I'm pretending? Jung saw this exact pattern in the 1920s. Patients arrived claiming they'd done the work, boundaries set, therapy completed, meditation practiced daily. They looked healed, but something was profoundly wrong. He documented a woman named Catherine who spent 3 years in intensive healing work, cut off toxic family, established boundaries, meditated daily, documented every breakthrough. Jung's case notes, the patient exhibits all external markers of recovery, yet she reports the same exhaustion, the same emptiness, the same disconnection. Because here's what you won't admit. You posted about your boundary, then spent 3 hours checking if your friend responded. You meditate to fix yourself, not know yourself. You document your healing because you need people to see you're not broken. You're not broken. But you are trapped in what Jung called the persona swap. And it's why 90% of empaths who heal never actually meet themselves. Answer this. If no one ever knew about your healing journey, no posts, no witnesses, no recognition, would you still do it exactly the same way? If you hesitated, that hesitation tells you everything. Here's what Jung discovered. Empaths don't shed their false self during healing. They create a new false self that looks like freedom, but functions exactly like the old prison. Jung documented this across hundreds of patients. He called it the validation swap. Old false self. I'm the selfless caretaker. Your worth came from being needed. You disappeared into their problems. New false self. I'm the healed, boundaried empath. Your worth now comes from being healed. You disappear into your healing journey. Jung observed a patient named Robert who'd spent 3 years recovering from codependency, cut off toxic family, started therapy, posted about his boundaries constantly, documented everything. Jung asked him, if no one ever knew about this work, would you still do it? Robert sat in silence for 10 minutes, then said, I don't know. I think I'm performing for an audience again. I just changed the performance. Stop. Both identities are performances. Both are exhausting. Both avoid meeting who you are beneath every role. You're not meditating to know yourself. You're meditating to prove you're not broken. You're not setting boundaries from peace. You're setting them from fear that people will think you're still the doormat. The cage changed shape, but you're still inside it. Jung wrote, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But he meant who you are, not who you were, not who you're trying to become. And here's what kept Jung awake. Most people never remove the second mask. They spend their lives performing healing, never meeting their actual self. Jung documented 3 specific traps that keep empaths locked in fake healing. If you felt the exhaustion of performing your own recovery, comment, I'm tired of pretending to be healed. The first trap Jung identified was transcendence without integration. Patients used spiritual language to avoid psychological pain. Jung documented a woman named Sarah who meditated 2 hours daily, spoke constantly about releasing toxic energy and choosing high vibrations. She appeared deeply spiritual, but when Jung asked about her childhood, she said, "I'm releasing that energy. I've transcended it." Jung wrote, "The patient has not transcended her trauma. She has suppressed it with prettier vocabulary. Here's your version. You say, 'I'm releasing toxic energy,' instead of, 'I'm angry my mother used me as her therapist for 20 years. One is spiritual bypassing. One is truth. You sage your apartment instead of sitting with rage. You affirm, 'I am healed,' while your body keeps the score of every unprocessed wound. Jung's warning: suppressed pain doesn't transcend. It ferments into psychological poison that leaks into every relationship." The second trap appeared in patients who announced boundaries loudly to prove they'd changed. Jung observed Elizabeth, who'd learned to set boundaries. She would say no, then spend hours monitoring reactions, seeking approval for her growth. Jung noted, "The patient is not setting boundaries. She is performing boundaries while internally remaining enslaved to others' perceptions." Here's your version. You text, "I can't help tonight. I'm prioritizing my energy." Then spend 3 hours anxiously checking if they responded, if they're mad, if you explained it right. That's not a boundary. That's a performance-seeking validation. Jung documented that real boundaries are boring. You enforce them and move on. No announcements, no monitoring. You just live them quietly. The third trap was most insidious. Jung observed patients who replaced their empath identity with their healed empath identity, making healing itself the new cage. A patient named Michael came to Jung after 5 years of intensive self-work. His entire social media documented his healing journey. He'd read every empath book, joined every support group. Jung asked, "What do you want from life, separate from healing?" Michael couldn't answer. After 10 minutes, "I don't know. My whole life is about understanding my empathy and healing from it." Jung wrote, "The patient has not found himself. He has found a new role to play. The cage is more comfortable, but it is still a cage." Here's the question. Can you describe who you are without mentioning being an empath or your healing journey? If you can't, you've replaced one identity with another. But here's what Jung discovered that offers hope. There's a way to tell if your healing is real, and it takes 30 seconds. Jung developed a simple diagnostic. 2 questions. 30 seconds. Complete honesty required. Question 1. If no one ever knew about your healing journey, no posts, no witnesses, would you still do it exactly the same way? If no, or you hesitated, you're performing for an audience. If immediate yes, you might be doing real work. Question 2. Can you sit in silence for 10 minutes without needing to meditate, journal, or work on yourself? If no, you're using healing tools to avoid yourself. If yes, you're comfortable without needing to fix yourself. Jung observed patients trapped in fake healing failed both tests. Jung's solution wasn't adding more practices. It was removing the masks. He called this shadow integration through the transcendent function. Step 1. Recognize the performance. Catch yourself performing. Notice when you're setting boundaries to prove you're healed rather than because you need them. Awareness without judgment. Jung wrote, "We cannot change what we refuse to acknowledge." Step 2. Dialogue with the void. Sit with the emptiness beneath both masks. Don't fill it with affirmations or activities. Ask yourself, who am I when I'm not helping others and not healing from helping others? Let the answer be, I don't know. Sit with that discomfort. Jung observed most patients wanted to rush past this stage. But this void, this not knowing, is where your actual self lives. One patient, Grace, spent 6 months in the uncomfortable nothing. No identity, no role. Jung encouraged her to stay there. Eventually she discovered she loved woodworking. Had no idea before because she'd never asked what she actually wanted. Step 3. Build from authenticity. Make choices from genuine desire, not should. Stop documenting your healing. Let boundaries be boring and private. Build identity from curiosity. What do I actually enjoy? Jung observed patients who completed this became uninteresting to talk about. They stopped performing transformation. They just lived quietly. That disappearance, Jung noted, was the only reliable marker of real healing. If you've caught yourself performing healing instead of living it, comment, "I'm ready to meet myself in the void." What Jung observed in patients who completed this process wasn't what anyone expected. They didn't become healed empaths or enlightened beings. They became what Jung called individuated authenticity, not a role, just themselves. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not who you were, not who you're trying to become. Who you are beneath every mask." 3 signs of real transformation. Jung documented 3 consistent markers. Sign 1. Boredom with your healing journey. You stop talking about it. It's no longer interesting because it just is. Sign 2. Comfort with not knowing. You can answer "I don't know" without anxiety or compulsion to figure it out immediately. Sign 3. Invisible boundaries. You enforce them so naturally no one notices, including you. Jung observed, the integrated individual does not perform their authenticity. They simply inhabit it. When you stop trying to be healed, healing actually happens. When you stop performing transformation, transformation occurs. Jung called this the transcendent function, when opposing forces integrate and something entirely new emerges. But Jung left one warning. Most people will immediately try to perform real healing. You cannot think your way out of the persona swap. You have to sit in the discomfort of not knowing. This isn't a 30-day challenge, it's a lifelong practice. Now you understand the difference between fake healing and real transformation. But there's one more pattern Jung discovered. What happens when empaths finally meet their authentic self and then sabotage it because they can't tolerate being free? Jung documented patients who did everything right, reached the void, started building from authenticity, then destroyed it all and returned to the cage because freedom was more terrifying than imprisonment. If you've ever gotten close to real change and mysteriously self-destructed, you need to see what I'm breaking down next. If this video helped you recognize the mask you've been wearing, hit subscribe. I'm breaking down Jung's framework for empaths every week. And comment below. What mask are you finally ready to remove?